So our 300's starting to come along pretty good here, except, what the hell is this thing? It is I, Jakey McSnakey, and in today's video, we're gonna be getting rid of the big tail thing on the back that all the lawyers apparently decided these bikes need. And I'm gonna walk you through that. It's not very straightforward on this bike. Well, it is if you just want to delete just this. I think there's a good Yoshimura kit out there. You can get it on old Revzilla, who's been a big sponsor to me in this whole series. So yeah, go check that out. That's very simple. If you just want to swap it over, maybe throw some little flush mount LED lights on the back, and you'd have a pretty cool setup. But if you're in the same boat I am, you want to completely delete this tail light. And if you're new to these video series here, I make videos working on many of things. The current bike is this 300L. I am a certified mechanic.
I went to school.
My goal here is to try to make these modifications as simple as possible so you feel confident that you can do it yourself. So there's a whole playlist of all the stuff we've done to this bike so far. It's going to continue to grow because we have a whole big pile of stuff over there. Supermoto wheels going on next. So subscribe if you're not subscribed, like, do all that stuff. I'm not talking to you Patreons. You know what's up, man. This is, you know. For you guys who aren't Patreons, there is a Patreon version of all these videos that comes out earlier, ad-free, and it's extended. Before we get into the equipment of what's going to go on the bike, let me show you why it's a little bit tricky on this bike versus a normal dual sport dirt bike. So there's your engine right here, back wheel. This back wheel part's important. There's a reason we drew this. Then you've got your subframe, or in the case of the 300L, this is all one piece. And your back tire flinging stuff around, right? Here's our air box in red. And you can see it's sucking in air, which is also red because, you know, we have a limited number of markers here. We also just have other sensitive electronics kind of packed up in this area. So let me show you what we normally have going on a normal motorcycle dirt bike thing. So you got like your fender up here, right? Looking cool. It curves all the way down and usually meets up to the air box. Then they have another little flap that comes down right here. This flap goes all the way down and kind of hangs between swing arms. So all the mud, muck, and debris, you're gonna hit this, fling down. The Honda, for some reason, that fender, you know, when you see it bottom down into the seat, it basically stops right there. The rear fender, its own little unit. So instead what they did is they built like this kind of like under tray thing. I don't know what you call it. The tail light's kind of like bolted into this. And this comes down kind of lower and eventually connects into the back of the airbox the same way. We can't just take this thing off. If we did, we'd have a direct hole top of the airbox where it pulls air in. This thing is all integrated into the tail light, the turn signals. Honda really did a job with this thing of making it obnoxious, incredibly obnoxious. If any of y'all followed the FZ07 project, you know we rebuilt the entire underside of the fender with our own homemade one out of a trash can. And that also has a giant 180 knobby sitting very close to it, much closer than our tire will sit, hammer fisting with a 75 something horsepower engine junk into it all the time. And it's held up absurdly well. So I've got all the confidence we can come up with something. But let me show you what exactly we're gonna be putting on back there. This is gonna be our new tail light. You see there's some holes in it to mount this to the back of a fender. And you're gonna find that these are incredibly close to the holes that the stock tail light bolts onto. This is gonna actually end up being incredibly, well, easy to mod and put on the bike. Revzilla sent me this, pretty well priced, and my discount code does work for these. For turn signals, also from Revzilla, they're Cycle Dynamics Magic Spotlights or something. They're just little LED strips, but unlike a little cheapo LED strip you go get at the AutoZone, this is acrylic filled, hard. So I'm gonna have some setup where these are gonna be running down the sides. The other thing that you will need is an LED turn signal relay. Go check out the last video and you can see where to install that. I'll point it out when we see it on the bike in there. Oh yeah, and also I'm wearing, down in the way table, my Big Red Pig shirt because I sold my last Big Red Pig. If you didn't know, I had an XR650R before this project, but this shirt still totally applies. It's my Big Red Pig shirt. You can get it at TheGardenSnake.com. Go over and check it out. All right, so let's start tearing the rear end apart. Now you get a little better look at this whole sort of under tray thing. The turn signals are a part of it. This bevel goes around. Tail light's like forcing you. Like if you pull this out and we just put that LED in here, we'd have a weird gap in here. It's also goofy. The exhaust is actually gonna have to be removed just to get this silly thing off. Wiggle this back and forth. That's weighty. Should we start it? Much like the exhaust, our helmet lock here is kind of like intertwined with it. So I need to pull this off as well. They're not even normal safety Torx. I'm not sure what they are. Got some old random Torx bits I don't particularly care about. I'm just gonna find one that's close, tap it in with a hammer, and I should be able to pull these two screws out. Find the plug to the tail light, just unplug that. And this is just held up by two 10mm. Did it before, yep, there we go. These things are just overly complicated for no reason. You can really see now, right, how Honda really has you committed to this whole design. Oh, not super graceful, but there it is. Back tire, that's where the air goes in. And we got a bunch of electronics and things. I think we actually need to then jump back to mounting the actual tail light because that's gonna have some sort of dictatingness about how we do all this. These holes are almost the exact same. All we need to do is drill these out a little bit bigger. We're gonna have to space it though regardless, because you'll see when I put the fender up on here, if we were to have this crust all the way down against there, it's actually a bit low. This is a very different system. Normally you're bolting these underneath. If you wanna go for a little more cool look, if you come back a little bit, we get wide enough that we can actually set this down on there. This does put the tail light a little underneath this plastic. You may not like that. You may want to come forward a little bit. If you were to put it right on those other holes, it puts it almost right at the tip here. Put that like that. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna kind of hybrid those two. I'm gonna go kind of somewhere in the middle. If I sink it down like this and pull it, I might have to flex these sides. I can get it about like that. That's actually what I think will look really cool. And kind of playing with that, what I would end up having to do is put holes almost right in front of these holes, just a little bit in front of them, slightly wider. We have this stem kind of piece that came down here. This held onto the tail light. I'm pretty confident too that I'm never gonna use my helmet lock either. What do we do with our frame here that's kind of unnecessary? You could just leave it, work around it. I wouldn't blame you. I'm just gonna cut them off. It'll just look a lot better too, and we'll save some weight. Oh, this bike is so heavy. It's definitely this right here. Get rid of that. This is the exact same paint as our frame. Put a link to this in the description. It's really, really good. Light coats are good, many of them. And I'm gonna implement my temporary paint booth. So we'll do that a number of times until it looks good. Okay, let's see how our paint job turned out. Feels literally the same all the way across. We've done my hybrid setup with the bolts just slightly in front of our main holes. I had to use a little bit longer spacers than I thought. All right, that's looking pretty good. I'd like it to be a little bit more up. I'd say that's close to the effect that we're going for. Thing is, the plate could flop around, and I've been known to shear a lot of plates across here. I'm gonna add another small screw right here, kind of in a place I can get away with between the numbers and right in the middle. You're supposed to have other random screws in the middle of your plate? Probably not. Kind of following up, we're kind of covering all the spaces, but at some point, we can't just stay along the bottom. We gotta do a flip up. So we need to keep it tight, thinking kind of right in this spot, width of the frame, just slightly sideways. I need a brief section that just goes up. Come on, come on. On top like that. So it's covered down there. See, the template, especially in this part where I was kind of cutting with a razor, it's pretty rough, so I've done some measurements and some things. Well, it wasn't sketchy at all, was it? So anyway, look, I've got my sheet here, my drawing on it. It looks like He-Man's sword. Don't say it looks like anything else. My brother got this for free a while back. It's some kind of Edison bandsaw little table thing, and it didn't work, and I got it to work. Bit snug, but that's what we want. We want that to be tight. Oh, look at that. I think I built something, people. Ooh, that's hot. I'm going to use the bolts that hold down the tail light to also go through this and kind of sandwich them all together. So I need to mark those holes into here. I don't know if this will work. I'm gonna try to put some tape on it, maybe a couple layers, and see if I can't like maybe press into it a little bit. I'm going to bolt on our fender. It's quite snug to get this down because there's some shapes in here that, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna bolt the front of it down. I can get this part down so it's a bit snug. I'm gonna get underneath here with the heat gun as I push down on it to try to mold and shape this thing a little bit so it's a little more happy to just go on. This one's perfect, and this one just needs a little hit, so that's really good. It doesn't look that different, but I think the magic happened down here. I've added a P-clip over here. This is a 3/4 one, 19 millimeter, because I need something to cinch it in on both sides, and obviously we're gonna connect up there. So we don't wanna lap it this way. I want to lap it behind. Pretty snug, which is what we want. Oh, that's looking good. Look at that. I'm gonna take a little screwdriver here and just kind of press a little divot in there. I do want to make this, attach these if I can, a little bit. Dual lock by 3M. Our stock fender, under fender thing here had this guy in it right here. This bolted to the frame, and then you had this little rubber insert that bolted into, or popped into. Let's give it a shot cutting this out and seeing if we can make that doable. Oh, it's close. Okay, I can just get my finger under there. It's tight. I'm gonna try to pull it back off without disturbing it. Awesome. So finally, we can get around to the actual wiring up of our new tail light. What we want to do is make it so we can plug our new tail light in to the factory wiring. Take your plugs, cut them off. 3 wires right here, 3 wires on our tail light. Strip back a little bit of the wire on each one of these, not a ton. Plug that in. Keep these kind of spread apart. Oh, there we go. I'm in a real danger zone right here. I got the bike on with these live wires. We hit our brake. Yeah, look at that getting brighter. I'm gonna put some heat shrink on here. Now, before we just connect these two together, there is a little bit of a problem I figured out, and that is this whole thing's gonna be slightly too short. So what I've done, I've cut me out some spits here. I had a red and a black, which is really convenient. What I don't have is a yellow. Put a piece of blue tape over what should be yellow. That somewhat distinguishes it. This is shrink wrap, glue, solder all in one. Very cool thing here. We just slip these guys down. Put the solder bit right in the middle. There we can start heating. If you ever have a problem putting these on, if I could twist, it kind of helps. Yeah. Oh, look at that. And normally you would just put some sort of turn signal through here, but I had figured out because of where our hardware comes through, there's just no way to put an actual normal turn signal there. I had this idea of really mounting them kind of right up here. They have a sticky back to them. I would never fully rely on that sticky stuff. What I'm gonna do, drill a small hole above it and below it on the front and back, and then another one down here. And what we'll do is just run a zip tie. We'll still use the sticky back on it, but we're gonna zip tie it as well, just to make sure it's held tightly down. A little rubbing alcohol. And we'll just do that again. They've given us an abundance of wire on the turn signals. I just measured on the bike, so we can snip all of that off. We don't need any of that. There it is. Yeah, look at that. That's actually pretty bright. Black goes to green, and your other color is your other color. Got all the wiring wired up there. Just gonna have to figure out a good way to run all this. So we'll go ahead and bolt this back down. We've got a lot of stuff sitting back here that used to have a home that kind of doesn't now. So we need to work on that. So when the seat goes on, it's pretty tight up against this, so nothing can really sit higher than this bar. This is my LED relay. I had a little piece of dual lock on it before. I think I'm just gonna continue that. We'll make a new home for it maybe right there. ABS fuses, and I think this is some kind of diagnostic thing. Got a little space kind of right in here. I think I could just stuff both those together. I think they'll just live happily there. Fuse box kind of set about there before. Here's what I'm thinking. Thinking about zip tying it right here to this bar. And go through this little clip that used to connect down if I have to get into it. I can still get into it. It's kind of at an odd angle, but it works. I know the seat sits tight against this, but I think it can handle a single zip tie underneath it. Now all that's really left is my connectors for the lights. This was our factory license plate light. Cool thing is our new light just has one incorporated into it. So I'm gonna hang on to the other end of it. Like I said, I'm gonna turn that into an accessory plug at some point. But for right now, I'm just gonna put a little bit of tape over this. The final little place of concern is these little slits right here. And I thought, oh, they surely don't go that far down. No, I stuck like a super long zip tie. It just goes down, down, down this tube. I also thought, well, maybe there's like an open end somewhere else, like a weep hole. So I sprayed some WD-40 with a long straw down in there in both of these. Big long sprays. It never went out anywhere. So I have WD-40 permanently down at the bottom of my frame now. So obviously we do not want to have an open hole that goes into our steel frame just forever. I don't know why Honda built this way. This whole back end is so silly. I think I'm just gonna fill it in with something, man. I mean, in the perfect world, I guess I'd weld this and re-powder coat the whole frame, and maybe one day we'll do that. But if you plan to do the same system that I'm doing, I'd put something in these just to close them off, because it's not open up anywhere else. The only thing left to do is to put the bike back together. Well, Honda gave us a garbage tail end on this thing, and we threw a trash can at it and got this. This looks so much better. Hopefully it's not too complicated and y'all will actually be able to follow along with this and do it. I have to imagine too, we've got to save some weight. I mean, a lot of stuff just came off the bike. Some of that plastic was like fairly chunky and heavy. I love this too, the actual fender is glowing. Turn signal's only about half from the side open, but you see this whole plastic glowing. That's so cool looking. Well, now I just see a giant spot. Here's the deal. It's Friday right now, Friday evening. Sunday is a Supermoto Sunday ride with the boys, and I'd like to go to it. And I don't want to be the guy on a dual sport. We're not even taking the bike off the lift. It's already up here. I say we just knock it out, get it done. So yeah, I was expecting to be wearing the same clothes and needing a shave and just in the following video. At least for the start of it. All right, I got work to do. I'll see you on the next video.